AskReddit by Miggy827. What is the craziest someone is getting fired moment you've seen? Was working at McDonald's some years ago. In the middle of the workday the police showed up and arrested the manager. Apparently she was embezzling money by keeping previous employees who left on the books and pocketing the paychecks. She was also found out to be in the country illegally as well. We all hated her. She was strict AF. Was a good day. I would have been clapping while she got walked out. Years ago I was learning to drive a big truck. CDL training to be precise. It was paid for and hosted by the company that hired us. There were about 8 people learning to drive. This one guy shows up on the 3rd day of training drunk as a skunk. Yup, insta-fired. I had something similar. Was at TAFE doing some training and one guy didn't show up for the first day or 2. I don't remember if it was a 2-day or 3-day course. Anyway, on the last day we have our big test for passing the course. This dipshit shows up and is visibly drunk or on something. He insists that he can do the test, but the instructor refuses to allow him in because he's missed most of the course. Dipshit eventually left. We all went down to the canteen for lunch and the dipshit showed up again. Drove his car in behind the canteen to the loading bay and started doing burnouts with a bunch of his dipshit friends hanging out the windows yelling and cheering. All of them visibly drunk or on something. Probably both. Dipshit took off when several staff started towards his car, doing more burnouts all the way to the road. No idea what happened to him, but I can only assume that he was arrested pretty quickly afterwards and likely fired, seeing as how the TAFE had all of his details. Pretty famous 911 call recording of a dispatcher laughing on the line W. A caller. The caller was reporting his girlfriend on fire and amp. You heard laughing in the BG before the dispatcher themselves laughed too. The caller was rightfully furious and called her out on it. The dispatcher was so frazzled on being called out she didn't ask some important questions that needed to be documented for the call. The caller ended up calling back. It was a rough lesson. We were shown this in training as a warning to watch anything coming out of your mouth noises around you while on a call. Don't be that dispatcher, lol. Edit. I'm pretty sure she wasn't laughing at him, rather laughing with her co-workers, but you honestly never know. Still horrible. I was the dishwasher in the kitchen of a small restaurant. It was set up so there were 2 long tables with a board across them for plates, like all the plates we owned. This one cook would come in about 5 every day and push the 2 tables apart a little. I just knew one day he was going to do that and move them too far. Sure enough, he did. Broke all the plates in the restaurant except for whatever was in the dining room. He just left without a word. I'm so confused. What was the purpose of moving the tables? What was the benefit? My first job at a dollar store. We had an inventory team come in. They were doing all the item counts. They were not taking their job seriously and were messing around. My manager was still there at 3 AM. The team decides to go on break to the convenience store next door. The police showed up after they had got back and arrested the entire team. They were all caught on camera stealing beer and snack cakes. The people who do that inventory work aren't exactly the cream of the crop of the labor force. A van of temporary labor shows up at the place where I worked. These guys are day labor that work with their bags. Semi-housed and many alcoholics. One new guy who's coming out of an alcohol-induced blackout asks, "Where am I?" Boss says the name. "You're here to work." "Work? Oh hell no," as he runs away. In my mind I am seeing this as a really ridiculous variation of the Skyrim opening. I worked in a warehouse for a plumbing company. We were basically order pickers. One of my direct colleagues got fired. Before he was notified, the entire warehouse and office staff was asked to leave the building in the parking lot and try to remain inconspicuous by not standing around in a group or hanging out close to the office. Most people went to their cars. HR took him into the boardroom where, once told, he became enraged and tried to fight them. The CEO was a bigger guy and managed to get him under control and get him directed to the front exit, which was a full glass door. On his way out, he smashed the glass door and managed not to cut himself up. He got in his car, backed up and rammed into the Sears Explorer, turning it sideways then sped off. Luckily he missed that there was a bunch of people sitting in their cars in the same parking lot. Later that day he called me up and had a huge conference call in which several people had their computer cameras on. At one point while a director, who was female, was talking, someone accidentally unmuted themselves and there were audible porn sounds going through everyone's mics. Everyone was stunned. Do you work for CNN? New guy does a safety violation within 15 minutes of starting. He may be new to use but he says he's been driving forklifts for years. So we tell him that he's done a safety violation. Didn't raise our voices, just matter of factly told him that he'd done it wrong. He's gone off his nut about how he's not going to listen to us three plebs tell him about effing safety violations. Storms to the manager's office and tells him to fire us three immediately or he walks. Manager asks us what is going on, so we tell him about safety violation. Manager tells him to pull his head in and get on with the job and walks off. New bloke is not going to stay near us, probably thought we were going to belt him, which we were entitled at that time, so walks off the site. Manager did warn us not to chase new blokes off the site as labor was hard to find for that industry. Called up for random drug test. Apparently someone at work gave him clean urine, which he strapped to his leg. The woman administering the test told him to pull up his pant leg. Busted. Crazy thing is, if he had just taken the test and failed it, he would have only gotten 2 weeks off and mandatory rehab. Yeah, but that would mean admitting they are an addict. Many addicts will do anything to not have to admit it. I was a WFH doing field service for my company for 35 years. My boss called me and told me that we were having a meeting to discuss workload realignment. A rep in a neighboring territory had retired, so it seemed legit, and these meetings are not unusual. When I arrived at the meeting location, expecting about 12 people to be there, I was surprised that I was the only one there. He told me, "Today is your last day working here. Nothing personal, the company is separating 300 people today." I was devastated, as I was only 3 years from retirement. The next insult was the following week, when I got an envelope in the mail with the company logo and return address and celebrate stamped all over it. It contained a catalog for selecting a retirement gift. Apparently, HR had been given my status as retired instead of laid off. Sounds like they don't wanna pay severance. I had a coworker who was fired twice. John was fired by Chris for lying on his resume and being ineffective in his role. We all cheered. A week later, Chris was fired by company owner Greg for mismanagement, spending too much and not enough sales. Greg hired John back. We all cried. Chris was awesome, John the opposite. During the one short week that John was out of a job, he posted a ton of lies about his role, accomplishments and revealed confidential information. Greg fired John. We all cheered. Once I saw my coworker slapped another woman coworker's ass and she kept on doing it repeatedly, then later my friend told me she got fired. Where is sexual harassment panda when you need him? Saw a guy go absolutely nuts on the printer copier once. I mean hitting it, kicking it, yelling. It was crazy. Very Office Space. Was it HP? If it was HP, I believe such behavior was completely tolerable. So, I recently got promoted at work and I'm now overseeing people and how they are doing in sales. Making sure they aren't taking advantage of the system and whatnot or pushing any false sales through. I had a meeting with the girl and my supervisor, the whole time was doing her nails. Boss asked her to please pay attention. She said I can do both and rolled her eyes lol. Anyway, he asked me to leave the Zoom meeting and I guess it turned into a whole blowout in the office. A department found terabytes of fucked up porn on someone's work computer and reported them to management. What kind of porn? The wind blew down a telephone pole and it took like 6 more with it. There are really specific and strict regulations on those poles and how the lines are mounted. There are breakaway connectors that are supposed to prevent exactly this kind of thing. My uncle was a lineman for like 30 years and he said someone could have gone to prison for that. They had to have consciously used the wrong hardware, probably because it was cheaper. Not technically a firing, but a colleague I came up with during our respective careers in a non-American law enforcement agency, who has a notoriously bad reputation, applied for a transfer to another office. It was granted almost immediately. Management literally told him get the fuck out. They didn't even want him to take his last 2 weeks. There was this old creeper dude who used to come by my work golf course, who a while back had been caught getting a BJ in the parking lot from a prostitute. My buddy and co-worker and everyone else had known this. One day my buddy was off duty and practicing before a men's club round and the old creep came and started giving him shit for hitting off the grass. Without hesitation, my buddy says yeah, how about you go get another blowjob in the parking lot from some fucking hooker, and the dude was floored. Came in ranting and raving, so my boss went out there and was like, dude, you can't say that, what the fuck? I have to fire you for this, and my buddy said whatever, fuck that guy, and then went down to the tee box and teed off. Dropped his crown. Co-worker at a restaurant years ago wasn't happy with the tip a particularly awful table left her. She followed them angrily to the front door, threw the tip receipt and the money they had left, I think about $1 in coins, shouting, "You forgot your change." Yeah, she definitely was fired, but we all wanted to cheer her on. Has a co-worker arrested by the FBI. He was working at nights at a chop shop his friend owned. My supervisor got his member stuck in the newspaper roller. We caught him pants down, lubed up, with a Playboy magazine on the side. He got curious, I guess, about the sensation. He had turned it down to its lowest setting and he had put 2 salmon fillets between. It had to be amputated. I had a long internship that involved rather a lot of being on the manufacturing floor. We were building lab instruments. On occasion, there would be large machines, forklifts, people lifts, etc., moving around where I worked. Once, I went back to the office area to tell my manager about something I'd found. While I was in there, all of 2, maybe 3 minutes, a group of maintenance workers had come out with their lift to swap out an older fluorescent light with an LED. When they were coming down, they lowered their lift directly onto my instruments. That's a small, multi-million-dollar mistake if I've ever seen one. This was a previous company from 5 years ago. Company occupies 1 floor of a high-rise but has a 2nd floor above that is set up for use but unused because we hadn't grown to a size or need it. A customer success guy and a seasonal girl from the support team apparently decided that they had to have sex on a conference table and figured it was best to do that on the unoccupied floor. So, they did engage in a very robust act of copulation. Then came back down to their respective desks and continued their work as though nothing had happened. Unbeknownst to them though, the IT team had security cameras on the floor and in the conference rooms. They were motion activated. They recorded and sent said recordings to some of the IT team. Long story short, the VP of the IT team took it to HR and the couple was gone by the end of the day. Of course, the story and a couple of video snippets circulated like wildfire. 2 separate stories that took place at a cargo facility on airport property. First one, less than a month after 9/11, a new hire asked if anyone could sneak him a pilot outfit to wear so he could get into places without suspicion. Second one, a new hire came to orientation having stopped off at the bar to celebrate his new job.